What's that like? I mean, for a dude in prison to go, hey, I'm gonna go do an armed robbery. Do people just accept that shit after they get robbed?
Well, they pray. Everybody prays on the weak. You know what I mean? So, and then the gangs, and they know you can't get a fair one with the gangs, and so, if they run in on you 6-7 deep and they all got knives, what can you do? You risk losing your life over some oodles and noodles and some candy bars or some shoes or something, or you can.
Some people are just accepting the fact that they got their shit stolen, and do they repeat the cycle, go back and steal some more at the next commissary? So, Mike, you end up sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for, your involvement in methamphetamine in Indianapolis, right? How old are you when you start to get involved in this methamphetamine game?
Let me see. When I got out, I was probably 26 when I got out of the state, or 27.
How much time did you do in the state?
I had a 10-year sentence in the state, 10 to 5 back in Indiana back then. It's different now. I don't know what the new laws are.
So you do 5 years back then. What do you go to prison for?
Dealing cocaine.
Dealing cocaine. You get out of prison. It's not cocaine no more. Now it's meth, right?
Now it's meth, yeah. The game done changed.
And you jump in head first, ready to get
Head first.
Did you ever in your wildest dreams think like, hey, man, check this out. You know what I'm saying? I can end up with a 20-piece over here?
No, not in the feds. To be honest with you, not in the feds. I always thought to go to the feds, you had to be some kind of kingpin or something, some kind of big-time drug dealer.
You catch this 20 years, right? Me and you, so people know, me and you became cellies at one point. One of my best friends in prison. I've been interviewing some of my good friends. We become pretty close over there. We're cellies for years. But how old are you when you walk into the federal prison system?
I was 28 years old when I got arrested.
28 years old, eventually sentenced to 20 years. What's your mindset when you go in there and the judge hits that gavel and says, hey, I'm giving you 20 years in federal prison?
Well, when you think about it, 20 years, 85%, you're kind of doing the calculations, but they don't sentence you in years. They sentence you in months. So when they say 240 months, it doesn't really register because you can't really calculate it, and it's just the thought process is you're kind of blank at first, or at least I was, You
figure out you got a 20-piece, right? What's going through your mind? You feel like your life's over? You're like, wow, 20 years? Like, what's going through your mind at that?
Well, when you're 28 years old and you calculate 20 years, you got to do 17 on that. So you're thinking you're going to be 45, 46 years old when you get out. You're like, damn, my life's pretty much over with. I'm going to have to work the rest of my life, and I probably won't ever be able to retire. Once I get out and get a job and start living a productive life again.
But I know you, and you've always been a hustler in prison. You've been jammed up with some serious investigations for getting money in prison. You've been transferred over it. You've been in prisons where people have been murdered at. Let's talk about your first prison, when you first walk into the Federal Bureau of Prisons. What's your first prison?
I went to Manchester, Kentucky.
Manchester, Kentucky. What's it like for you to go to Manchester? What's that prison like when you get there?
Well, when I got there, it wasn't too bad. They had some weight piles. It was a decent yard back in. The administration was all right. It was pretty laid back, to be honest with you, back then.
Pretty laid back, but you decide, man, I got to start making a couple dollars over here, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about the hustle game, because you were like a hustle man in prison. Tell us how.
Well, you got your K2, you got your Suboxones, you get your hands a little bit of everything. Matter of fact, cigarettes. All the officers down there, they chew tobacco. So that's like black gold in prison. That's probably the best hustle in prison is tobacco.
Tell me about the tobacco hustle and how you end up getting jammed up.
Well, I had a buddy. He worked in the middle office, and both counselors from both sides, they chewed that, whatever that stuff is, chewing tobacco. And he'd get the bottles of it, and he'd give it to me, and I'd dry it out and sell it.
People are smoking this stuff that the police had in their mouth.
They're smoking spit. Yes, they are. Man, they love it. They can't get enough of it.
One of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, man, in my life, let alone in prison.
It's gross. It is gross. Especially when you get a 20-ounce Coke bottle full of tobacco and spit and saliva. It's disgusting.
So how much you called that black gold? How much money would you make off a bottle of that shit?
Well, you can make anywhere from 40 books to 100 books. Just depends.
Anywhere between $200 to $500, somewhere in that
Anywhere,
range.
yeah. Every day you can do that.
Every day you're making $200 to $500 off chewing tobacco that someone had.
That somebody had in their mouth. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Let's talk about kind of the prison politics, white politics, people getting angry, people, that kind of money. People are really trying to maneuver and do things. What ends up happening? How do you get jammed up in an investigation?
Well, you always got your haters. You know what I mean? So they see you getting money, and then they want to undercut you or cut your throat. So I had one dude. He went behind my back to the dude and hated on me. Try to do what?
You got to give us more details. You can't just say, "Hey, he hated on me." What happened? Because you end up in.
He went behind my back to the dude I was getting it from and told him some bullshit. You know what I mean? try to get me jammed up.
What happens? Do you end up going to the hole?
Well, yeah, I ended up going to the shoe. Yeah, I went to the shoe for some other stuff, and the whole investigation about some cell phones getting thrown over the fence. But that's a whole nother story.
That's a story I want to talk about. People need to know about cell phones, how they come in, how much money they go for. Tell us about the investigation. I mean, it's statute of limitations. You can't go to jail for it. But tell us what's going on or what they allege happened.
Well, they alleged that we had some cell phones thrown over the fence. And it's kind of crazy because when the cell phones got thrown over the fence, in a total of 2 weeks, the whole investigation, everybody that was involved was in jail. I don't know how, but somehow somebody told on us, and everybody involved and a couple that weren't were in the shoe. And that's when I got sent to Raybrook and met you.
But let me ask you a little bit about that cell phone thing, right? I mean, there's a dude that allegedly goes home, right? Is this the case where the dude goes home and they say you guys told him what to do and he throws the phones over?
Yeah.
How many phones are how many phones allegedly came over the fence?
Well, it was two phones. It was two cell phones. They were supposed to be smartphones, touchscreens, but they weren't. They ended up being track flip phones, and nobody wanted them, so we was kind of stuck. The dudes who was supposed to buy the cell phones, they kind of backed out because they weren't the touch screens.
What would a touchscreen cell phone go for if you were inside USP in FCI Manchester at that time?
At the time, I think they was going for, we had them on the market for $2,500.
$2,500 for a touchscreen cell phone.
$2,500 for a touchscreen cell phone. It probably cost $100 on the street.
So you guys do get these two flip phones, right? You end up getting them?
Yeah, we got them.
End up selling them or no?
Yeah, we sold them. Yeah, for $2,500. We still sold the same flip phones for $2,500.
So some people bought them. Some people, hey man, it's a phone. I want it.
Yeah, at the time there weren't any phones on that yard. It was back in 2017.
And now, how long before they come round you up and take you guys off to the hole?
From the time they got thrown over the fence, it was 2 weeks. The whole operation was shut down. Everybody involved was in the shoe.
What about the dude that allegedly brought the phones and threw them over the fence? Does he get arrested out on the street?
Yeah, he got arrested out on the streets. Yeah, he did. Don't ask me how they knew. Don't ask me. I don't have no idea.
He end up getting more time for that or no? Do you ever find out?
I don't know what happened behind. I don't know if it got violated or I don't know.
And for leaving prison and throwing phones over the fence, what was he going to make?
I don't really remember what it was, because it was supposed to be it was supposed to be a whole lot more in the package that it wasn't. It was supposed to be Suboxones and tobacco and it wasn't. So I really don't remember what all the details were.
Pretty much a failed mission, right?
Pretty much a failed mission, yeah.
And you get shipped off to Raybrook. What's it like to go to New York when you're all the way from Indiana?
Well, I was far from my family then, you know what I mean? So I didn't get no more visits, so
You remember what Raybrook was like? Was it a little bit violent when you got there?
yeah, it was a little bit violent. Yeah. Yeah. There was had some, the New York Bloods up there, they always kept something going on.
How about in front of our unit? Do you remember when the kid from Jersey came up, the blood kid from Jersey came up there and tried to stab the dude in front of Genesee A?
And got stabbed in front of, yeah. I remember that.
What's it like? Go ahead.
Or when they was on the yard beating the lieutenant up.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that. Tell us what happened. I mean, the lieutenant ends up getting beat up on the yard. What happened?
Well, we was out on the yard just hanging out and looked over. They was all grouped up over there in the corner, and the lieutenant was out there. Next thing I know, the lieutenant's on the ground getting beat up.
What are you thinking when you see something like that?
I was just like, oh shit, here we go.
What do you think is one of the worst things that you've seen in prison? Out of all the prisons you've been to, what's one of the worst things that Mike actually seen?
One of the worst things that I actually seen. Well, I didn't actually. Well, they actually seen. Let me see. I seen a few people getting stabbed when I was at Manchester, and that was pretty much it. But the one that I didn't actually see it was when I was in Beckley, and it was New Year's Eve, 2023, going into 24. The vice lords actually killed a dude.
Beckley, what's that like? They end up killing a dude. What happens? Why does a dude get killed over there in Beckley?
Well, they killed him over a sale. Be honest with you. You know how the prison politics are. You got your Midwest cells, you got your gang cells, the white cells, the black cells. So the dude was in a gang cell, I believe, and he was from the Midwest. He was from Ohio, Cleveland, I believe, and they killed him. They was all drunk. The dudes was drunk. And
let's talk about that. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do what?
Go ahead. Say what you were going to say.
I said, and the situation just gets out of hand, and the gangs they don't give ones. So once one gets involved, they're all getting involved, and it was just a situation.
Let's talk about cells, right? Because this kid gets murdered over a cell. Some people think they own cells. Some people, say, hey, this is a blood cell, or this is a GD cell, or this is a Midwest cell. Tell the people what that is, because there's people that are watching that don't know, that have never been to prison.
Well, the prison politics, you got your different, it's segregated. You got your whites, your blacks, your gangs, your South Car, your Midwest, you got your West Coast, and everything's segregated. So when they get these cells, they think they own them, which in a sense, it's kind of true, because the police, they don't really regulate anything, really, and you get these cells, and when they put you in a prison, they might put you in a cell, and they'll come to you and say, well, you got, this is a homie cell or whatever, So once you get situated, your people will find you a place to go, and if you don't want to go, then it could get all bad for you.
So people actually believe in their minds that they own these cells, and that you can't just go in this cell. You can hang out here for a little bit, but you got to find a place to go, because
they definitely do. Yes. They definitely
gets killed. Why? Because he's drinking, or because the gang members are drinking?
I think they were all drinking. It wasn't in my unit. We could just see out the windows, So I don't know if they were all drinking or if it was just one group, but they were all drunk.
And this dude's in a cell. He's not a gang member, right?
No, he wasn't a gang member. I don't think. No.
And these dudes, the dudes that you're around, like dudes are killing dudes in FCIs. A lot of these dudes probably got 4 or 5 years, 8 years, 9 years, 12 years. They don't have a boatload of time, right? Usually.
Yeah. No, to be honest with you, to my understanding, every one of them was short, getting ready to go home.
Getting ready to go home, they get involved, and hey, man, we got to, put the press on this dude, man. We're about to beat the brakes off him. But they probably had no intention of killing him, but they end up killing him. And now they're probably all getting a boatload, right?
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, probably so.
I had put some videos out that you had sent me. And, people don't know who sent them or whatever, but with people pizzas in there, and videos of the yard, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So you end up sending me these videos or whatever, what's life like inside of that federal prison system? Because I think someone actually made like a conveyor belt cooker, and you guys were cooking pizzas on it and fried chicken. How does
Yeah, we had an oven. Matter of fact, we had a heating element out of the kitchen. The hot pots in the kitchen. The serving line. We had a heating element out of there, and we turned it into an oven, and we were cooking pizzas and all kind of good food.
Tell the people why you had to start doing that. They took the microwaves, right?
Yeah, they took the microwaves. Yeah. Yeah, matter of fact, they took the microwaves when I was up at Raybrook.
You ever had any physical altercations in federal prison, Mike?
Did I what?
You ever had any physical altercations in prison yourself?
Yeah, I got in a couple fights, yeah.
What was that over?
Well, really just horse playing. It all started out horse playing, but when people get mad whenever you make you get the best of them in front of a group or something, you know what I mean? Everybody starts laughing, so they get in their feelings, and now they want to fight. They can dish it, but they can't take it.
Me and you had a couple disagreements before.
Oh yeah, we got into it.
Me and you end up getting, I'm just going to tell people for the context. We end up getting into it early in the morning. The light cover falls off and it electrocutes me. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I remember.
Took all the fight out of me. The fight was over. I'm like, all right, man. I think we both had enough at that point, especially when I got electrocuted, right?
Yeah.
And
it started because you went down to the lieutenant's office and stole some clippers, and came back and
yeah, bro, I didn't want people to know that I stole the clippers from the lieutenant's office, right? But the lieutenant, they were going around taking clippers from everybody, so I knew where their hiding spot was. So I snuck in there. I grabbed like 5 or 6 clippers. They were hidden in the ceiling, and I brought them back and sold them for some money. But I had turned them on that morning, and you were trying to sleep. And I don't know if you really got mad, but you said something. And I was like, man, whatever, bro. And you jumped off the bunk, and we got into a little tussle.
Yeah.
I mean, you were more like my brother, man. You were one of my best friends I've ever had in life, let alone in prison. You, Brad, Vic. I mean, you guys are my buddies, my partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk a little bit about the K2 game in Raybrook. I mean, we all remember Biz. I don't know. I think I told you Biz died, right?
Yeah.
Biz ended up with carbon monoxide poisoning, bro. I mean, crazy.
Yeah, it's sad. It's get out of prison and die over some carbon monoxide.
He was in there. He was hustling deuce. He was making some pretty good money, right?
Yeah.
What would they make off a sheet of this K2? They'd have it sent in. It's on legal papers. How much money could you actually make off a whole sheet of deuce?
Oh man, it's hard telling, man. It's hard telling because you sell a little piece. You sell a little piece like this big for a book of stamps, which the book goes anywhere from $3 to $5 a book. So just think how many little squares you get out of a sheet of paper. You could make probably 10 grand off a sheet of paper.
Thousands and thousands of dollars.
Thousands and thousands of dollars. Yes, depending on if it's gas or not. Everybody wants the gas.
Tell the people what it's like for dudes that smoke deuce in federal prison. What happens to them? What do they do?
Man, they get annihilated. They hit this piece of deuce and they fall out, man. And you can pretty much do whatever you want to them. You can go in their pockets, take everything they own, and they have no idea what happened. You could probably do a little bit more if you're on that type of time, if you're from DC or something somewhere,
You're crazy. What's one of the craziest things you've seen someone do from smoking that?
Oh man, I've seen them. They do some crazy stuff, man. I've seen them run around. I've seen them hit a piece and run around the unit, and dude just grabbed a broomstick and started whacking this other dude with it out of nowhere and just took off running. And when his people tried to get him, he jumped over the rail and run out of the front door of the unit.
Remember Rabbit and all them dudes, the Southsiders?
Yeah.
Remember what they would do when they would hit a piece of that deuce?
I can't remember.
They'd all be in sync and never hit each other. They'd be going in a
circle. Oh yeah. I remember that now. Yeah, that you say that. Yeah, they were swerving like this.
So how about Jesse? Do you remember Jesse, my typer?
Yeah. I remember Jesse. Yeah.
Do you remember when Jesse would hit a piece?
Yeah. Yeah.
He like
He would fall out, man.
sometimes he'd be standing straight up and just fall right down like a tree, right? Boom.
Just fall straight down. Yeah.
Or how about when you'd ask him a question and he'd be like,
yeah. Yeah, I kind of forgot about him for a minute. Yeah. Now you bring it up, I remember.
some people do wild things. How about Mike Centeni? Do you remember Mike?
Mike Centeni. No, I don't remember that guy. No.
The young kid from Rochester, man. Remember he was going to fight Adam? He called Adam a cho.
Oh, yeah. I think so, yeah.
He's a peer. I had him on the channel a few years ago when he was caught up in his addiction. He's a peer support specialist now, man. Got his stuff together, and I think he's living a pretty good life.
Yeah.
Worst prison you ever been to, brother?
The worst prison was probably Beckley. They had it was a FCI, but it was run like, it was like almost like a USP kind of. You know, they had the split yard. We stayed on lockdown, man, because the shoe was full. You know, they had that Brave program there, so they have all them youngsters with them penitentiary points, but they can't send them to the penitentiary because they're so young and they know they'll probably get killed. So they send them to this Brave program, but then they sign out of the Brave program and they just leave them on the yard. They don't send them to the penitentiary. So you got all these young dudes in here with a boatload of time. Some of them don't. Some of them have a little bit of time, but they got penitentiary points. So they're just wild.
You talk about wild. Tell the people, what kind of things are they doing that makes them wild? Are they stealing? Are they running around? What are they doing?
Man, they're stealing, they're robbing, they're ganging up and running in a cell 5-6 deep and robbing people, pulling knives on them, you know, and taking their shit.
They're doing armed robberies in the FCI.
Doing armed robberies. Yeah.
What's that like? I mean, for a dude in prison to be like, hey, I'm going to go do an armed robbery. Do people just accept that shit after they get robbed?
Well, some they pray. Everybody prays on the weak. You know what I mean? So, you know, and then you know the gangs, and they know you can't get a fair one with the gangs, and so yeah, you know if they run in on you 6-7 deep and they all got knives, you know, I mean, what can you do? You know, you risk losing your life over some oodles and noodles and some candy bars or some shoes or something, you know, or you can.
People are just some people are just accepting the fact that they got their shit stolen, and do they repeat the cycle, go back and steal some more at the next commissary?
Well, I mean, you know, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You know, some people accept it, some people don't. Some people retaliate, you know, go to their car after the fact, and you know, next thing you know, it's a big old ordeal.
Who do these people usually target though at like an FCI, like FCI Beck?
Oh, they usually target, the weak, you know, the guys who don't really run, the guys that are on man time, you know, don't really have a car.
About Choskis, were there Choskis over there? Were they targeted?
No, there weren't too many. There weren't too many of them. Not at Beckley. No, that was a pretty active yard. So they got them. Them dudes didn't walk that yard. No.
So they were putting in work over there.
Oh yeah, they were definitely putting in work over at Beckley. Yeah.
Talk about work. Tell the people what putting in work is.
Well, you know, when you got somebody comes on the yard or something, you got to go put some work in, go beat them off the yard, or you know, if a chomo does slip through the cracks, and now it's a whole ordeal. You know, you got to get him off the yard.
Get him off the yard. So you can't just tell someone at Beckley like, "Hey, you can't be here." I mean, they're putting hands and feet on.
Yeah, they're gonna put hands on you, get you out of there. Yeah, yeah, because you know the lieutenant, the lieutenants tell you, hey, if you all want to run somebody up, they gotta be bloody when they come up. You know, so it's
administration. The administration. The administration's pretty much promoting violence, saying we're not going to let you just let them walk up. You got to beat them up so that we can document that they got injured in a violent way and they can't be on this compound.
Yeah, they want to see some blood. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, the administration. See, people don't understand. Back in the day, and still in some places, the administration wants you to discipline your own so they don't have to deal with the problems, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen, prisoners, like, do what the cops say and they beat people up. But as soon as they kill someone, guess what? The cops think they're buddies no more. Now they're
No, they're not their buddies. Now they want to put charges on you and, send you to court.
I think you also ended up in Memphis, right?
Yeah, I was in Memphis. Yeah.
What was Memphis like for you?
Well, I was pretty much locked down the whole time I was in Memphis because when I first got there, they had assaulted a staff. Somebody on K2, they assaulted a staff member, and the prison was locked down when I got there. And then they sent me there for RDAP, but then they turned Memphis to a low, and then they locked the whole prison down again. We pretty much back on COVID regulations where we only get out of our cell for 2 hours a day. So for the next 4 months, I was only out of my cell for 2 hours a day. So I was pretty much locked down the whole time.
Talk about shot callers. You and Ray Brook with, one of the New York homies. I mean, the big homie was in our unit, AD, right? You remember AD?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
What was he like as a shot caller, man?
He was pretty wild.
I think he was the type of dude that was kind of like looking for problems, or he created issues.
Yeah, he definitely did. Yeah, he definitely created issues. Well, as a matter of fact, I think Lex had the yard, but AD wanted it.
AD wanted it, and kind of really, Guy Fisher was there at the time. But eventually, I think AD kind of ended up with the yard, right?
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah,
kind of strong armed it and like, hey, look, this is what it is. And then something happens in our unit. Do you remember that big blood dude that was allegedly from Cali and had all that money and he had that white, G-Shock watch? Do you remember that dude?
Yeah, I think I do.
Said that he was Suge Knight's cousin and all that shit, and they ended up.
Yeah.
So they had the fight in the unit. Remember they did. I think you might remember this. They jumped on that dude. I think they called him Rabbit too. He was from like Wisconsin, kind of heavy set, sloppy, didn't work out. And that big, tall, light-skinned dude, like they jumped on the kid, and the kid was working, and then that blood dude, that was his buddy, so he kind of like was trying to break it up, and that was the reason why they ended up sending him up top. Do you remember?
Yeah. I think I remember that. Yeah.
So really, I think at one point they just looked for a reason. This dude had and this is prison, and the reason I'm telling this, this story or narrating this story is because this dude really didn't do nothing wrong. He was really from, said he was from Cali, but I think he was really from New York, blood, all of that. Big ass dude, and they send him up top, and he accepts it. He says, "Okay, I'm going to go up top." But I really think it was a plot to steal all his shit. Have you seen?
Probably so, yeah. And the East Coast Bloods and the West Coast Bloods, they don't really respect each other, even though they're in the same gang. They really don't respect each other. You know what I mean? So all them East Coast Bloods, they really didn't. Because West Coast think that they're the ones that started all that stuff. So, they don't really respect the East Coast. And it was just, there's always hidden agendas behind everything.
Mike, I was your cellie, right? Did a lot of legal work. I helped you. I wrote your compassion releases. I wrote clemencies. You were sentenced under 851. The First Step Act changes that. It takes the 20 years down to 15. But your court kept saying, you know what? I'm the judge, but I don't have the power to do this. So you pretty much did your whole bid. You lost some good time along the way. How much time did you actually do?
Well, when the First Step Act came into effect, I got the year off because I was at low recidivism. So I actually did 15 years and a month on it.
You ended up doing 15 years, 1 month on a 20-year sentence.
Yeah.
What did you miss most about being free, about being home, man?
My family. I miss my family. My father passed away when I was in here. All my grandmothers passed away. And I just missed all that time getting to spend with them in their final days.
You and your father were pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Father loved you. I got out of jail. Your father was communicating with me, trying to help you get out of prison. And, and you get that call or whatever happens. I want people to hear this, man. What did it feel like for them to tell you, hey, your father passed away? Because your dad was in good health, right?
Yeah, he was in good health. Just beat cancer. Just rung the bell from beating cancer. Probably 2 weeks before that. The doctors told him that this was his last visit. He doesn't have to come back. You're free and clear of cancer. And about 2 weeks later, he just goes to sleep and doesn't wake up.
And how does he die, man?
He died in his sleep. My mother thinks he had a seizure when he was sleeping or something.
What's it like for you to get that call, though, man, when they call you down there and say, we're sorry to tell you this? What does it do to you inside your heart?
Well, at the time, I was at Memphis at the time, and it was June 11th, 2023. It was a Sunday, and I was sitting there, and I was waiting. I was waiting on the chaplain to call me for the threshold program because I had started the program when then I got transferred, and I thought that because they did a religious services call, and then the officer came to my cell to get me, said they want you to the religious services. But they just did a religious service move, so I thought that maybe it was the threshold program. But when I got up there, it wasn't. It was he called me in the office and said, your mother just called, and as soon as he said that, I knew it was my father. So he put me on the phone with my mother, and she was hysterical. She had just found him, and when you hear your mother hysterical because she just found your father dead, it kind of did something to me, man. And I really couldn't even talk. I couldn't even finish the conversation with her. I just told her, "Hey, Mom, I love you, but I can't talk right now." And we got off the phone. I just went back to my cell and kind of stewed on it for a little bit.
I remember you used to always tell me, man, I got to get out of here, man, before something happens to my parents. I got to get out of prison. You remember saying that?
Yeah,
One of your worst fears ends up coming true, right?
definitely came true.
There's a lot of dudes out here, man, that love their parents, but they're caught up in the streets and, you're getting money. And when you go to jail, man, all the money's gone, all the friends are gone. And all you really got, man, at the end of the day, you usually always got mama, you usually always got your parents, right?
Yeah.
And when you lose them, then you don't have shit. And I think young dudes should really, take that in, man, because in the blink of an eye, the only person that's sending you money could end up dying. The person you love, the person you care about, the only person that's stuck by you can end up gone, and you'll never spend another Christmas with them. You'll never spend another birthday. You'll never sit down for Thanksgiving dinner with that person ever again. And these are real consequences, right?
Yes, it's a real thing. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, your mom and dad, your family, they're the only ones that's going to be there for you in the end. When you get a 20-year sentence, the girls, they're going to go. They might stick around for a little bit in the time in the beginning, but eventually they're going to move on with their lives. But your family is going to be there. So they're the ones that are really going to have your back and send you money and, take care of business for you while you're in there. And when they're gone, then now you're left with nobody. So you're just,
Left with nobody.
left with nobody.
Mike, most dangerous gang group car you ever been around in federal prison? Who was the most dangerous?
Probably the Midwest Coalition.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You got the coalition is you got your GDs, your vice lords, your all pretty much all the gangs that came out of Chicago. Once they go to prison, they group up and they may beef on the streets, but now they're in prison, so now they're a coalition.
What do you think made them the most dangerous?
Man, because there's just so many of them.
No problem getting busy, putting in work, stabbing, hitting with locks if the shot.
Yeah, no problem. And they don't. When one goes, they all go. That's the motto.
You talked earlier about how you had gotten out of state prison and jumped right back into the game, selling drugs, all of that stuff. What's going to keep you out of prison now?
Well, because now I'm 44 years old now, and I don't want to. It's going to be life sentence next time, so I don't want to. I don't want to. The risk and reward just isn't there anymore. So.
How hard is it to get a job, like a good job, where you can actually make a living at your age?
It's pretty hard, and it's not really hard. It's just right now my current situation that makes it hard because I'm matter of fact I'm on this house arrest right now, home confinement, and this is a lot of hoops you got to jump through, and you can't go out and navigate. I moved down here. I'm not in Indiana anymore, so when I moved down here to a new city where my mother is, I don't know the area. I don't know anybody, so it's kind of hard to network and communicate with people being under this home confinement.
But you're going to end up figuring it out, right?
Yeah, matter of fact, I just went on job and got one today. Matter of fact,
Where are you going to be working at, if you don't
a
mind?
little landscaping place up the street.
How much they pay an hour over there?
$17 an hour right now.
$17 an hour, but you got, you got this mindset where you've never been really just an employee, man. You're going to figure it out and eventually start your own business, right? Is that the goal?
Yeah, that's eventually the goal. Yeah, I've been thinking about doing hot shot trucking once I get off this house arrest.
I definitely hope things, work out for you. Anything I can do for you, I'm going to help you. Anything you want to say before we get ready to go, Michael?
Yeah. Well, you already know what you do, Chad. Freedom fighters. I know you put in the work, and you're a bad dude at that law work, man. You got a lot of people out of prison, man, and keep up the good work, man.
Well, I definitely appreciate you. I mean, you were my cellie. You've seen a lot of people go, not tooting my own horn, but I do that stuff, man, because I do like helping people. I like getting people out of prison.
Yeah, I remember I'd be in the bed, man. I look over, you be at that little corner desk, man, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, man, just writing your little hand away till it was hurting.
So before we go ahead, I'm sorry.
Paperwork everywhere in the cell.
Let me ask you this before we go, right?
Yeah.
You knew that I had 40 years, and I know Brad, I'm going to bring Brad on too as soon as he gets off his stuff. Did you ever think I was going to get out of prison, or were you just looking at me like, damn, man, this dude's messed up and he really thinks he's getting out?
Man, I knew that you were putting in a lot of work, man. I didn't know if it was ever going to come through or not, but matter of fact, I remember, I remember, I don't know if you probably remember this, the lady that helped you. You wasn't even going to write her back, man, but I was like, bro, you never know. Just write that lady back, man.
We were on
you thought it was a scam.
We were on a lockdown, and I said, man, I ain't writing that lady back. You're like, man, write that lady back. And if we weren't locked down, I wouldn't have wrote her back. She knew my judge. She did help me. I put in a lot of work as far as rehabilitation and programming, law work, all of that stuff. But she had a direct connection over there at the federal courthouse, and she did help.
Yeah.
What did you think when I did get out, Mike? Were you like, holy shit, that dude got out?
Man, yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I said, man, that dude did it, man. He got out, man. But you put in all the hours, bro. So, I tip my hat to you on that one, man. You put all the hard work. You stayed in that law library, man. And, I know you probably felt kind of overwhelmed because you kept getting people out of prison, but you couldn't get yourself out at one point in time. And I know that probably gets a little discouraging, man.
The one time I was discouraged, do you remember the blood kid? His brother was the big homie. I ended up winning his clemency, and I got him out. And they called him on the intercom. They called me after him.
Oh, yeah.
And I went back there, and they said, no, you didn't get it.
Yeah.
That's the one time when I felt like I was giving up. I kind of felt devastated. But anyway, listen, man, definitely appreciate you coming on. I'm going to tell people, if you like what we're doing, Blood on the Razor Wire TV, with respect until tomorrow, we're out.